Your four favorites are Cure, I Saw the Devil, Memories of Murder, and House. So you've got a mix of horror movies and thrillers from Japan and South Korea. The first three movies all involve serial killers, and Cure and Memories of Murder are both neo-noir detective films. If I wanted to pick a movie that I can connect to all four of your favorites, I'd go with The Wailing. It's a South Korean thriller like I Saw the Devil and Memories of Murder, and it involves the investigation of a series of mysterious killings like Cure and Memories of Murder. But it's also a horror film with some supernatural elements like House. Ichi the Killer is a Japanese horror film like House. It was released in the early 2000s like Memories of Murder. One of the characters is manipulated or controlled into committing murders like some of the characters in Cure, and one of the characters is an extremely violent psychopath like in I Saw the Devil. Speaking of movies directed by Takashi Miike, he also directed The Happiness of the Katakuris, which is a chaotic, bizarre Japanese horror comedy like House. But The Happiness of the Katakuris is a remake of The Quiet Family, which is from the director of I Saw the Devil, and features one of the stars of that movie as well as one of the stars of Memories of Murder. Speaking of movies from the director of I Saw the Devil, I think you should check out A Tale of Two Sisters, which is also a psychological horror film like Cure. The protagonists are teenage girls like in House, and it explores a lot of the same themes as your favorites, but I don't want to spoil anything. Sweet Home is from the director of Cure, and like House, it's a Japanese horror film about a haunted house with a surreal visual style. Although I should mention that the film was edited in a way that Kiyoshi Kurosawaa didn't approve of, and there was a whole lawsuit and everything, so I can't exactly say that it's like if House was made by the director of Cure, but I still think it's worth checking out. Stray Dog is a Japanese detective film like Cure, but it leans more into the thriller genre than horror, but you're also clearly a fan of thrillers. And this movie was considered a precursor to the buddy cop genre, which I know it sounds weird that I'm bringing that up because I know none of your favorites are considered buddy cop films, but the trademark of the genre involves two officers with conflicting personalities, and I think the detectives in Memories of Murder have very different personalities, so I think it makes sense. Fireworks is another Japanese film, this time about a former police detective. I tend to recommend this one to fans of Cure not just because of the detective thing, but because of the way the protagonists are also trying to care for their wives. But based on your favorites collectively, I really think you'd like this one. It's got crime and action, but also explores some pretty dark themes. Mother, like Memories of Murder, was directed by Bong Joon-Ho, but I would have recommended this one even if you didn't have one of his films in your favorites, because a lot of your favorites involve someone investigating a crime or trying to track down a killer, and this film follows a mother who's on a mission to track down the real killer after her son is charged with murder. Decision to Leave is a South Korean detective film like Memories of Murder. Sorry for recommending so many movies from the same directors, but Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance is a South Korean revenge film like I Saw the Devil. You saw almost all the South Korean revenge films I wanted to recommend, but since two of your favorites are Japanese films, I figured you might enjoy some Japanese revenge films as well. So I want to recommend Harakiri, Confessions, Lady Snowblood, Kwaidan, Kuroneko, Why Don't You Play in Hell, and Female Prisoner 701 Scorpion. Sleep is a South Korean horror film slash thriller like I Saw the Devil, but it also has some comedic and some sort of supernatural moments like House. And the director of this film worked with Bong Joon-ho before, and he praised Sleep as being the most unique horror film and the smartest debut film he'd seen in 10 years. Burning is a South Korean neo-noir psychological thriller like Memories of Murder, and I feel like this seems up your alley because a lot of your favorites delve into obsession and ambiguity. Since you like House, if you want another Japanese horror film that involves kung fu and spirits, ghosts, or demons, then I think you should check out Samurai Reincarnation. I feel like I should throw in at least a few movies that aren't from Japan or South Korea. So another movie that's about a serial killer like three of your favorites and also a detective film like Cure and Memories of Murder is Zodiac. I think The Vanishing fits the vibe of your favorites because it depicts a man obsessing over finding out what happened to his girlfriend, and a lot of your favorites involve investigating crimes or obsessively trying to track down a killer to get revenge. And another movie that involves a detective investigating a crime like Cure and Memories of Murder, but also involves someone taking matters into their own hands and trying to get revenge like I Saw the Devil is Prisoners. Since you like House, another surreal comedic over-the-top movie I think you'd enjoy is Rikio, the Story of Ricky.